The key to happiness is to make sure that you understand that sadness is an essential element to happiness. Show me a person who's never been sad, and I'll show you a person who's never been happy. So it turns out that happiness actually has two components in it. Happiness has the component called happiness and the component called sadness. Very often when we're sad, it's an invitation to ask ourselves, what's going on in my life? And if one asks oneself that question, why am I sad relative to my wife? Well, that helps me understand maybe there's something that I've done that actually is not evoking in the very best in her. Or maybe there's something I need to speak to her about regarding why I'm feeling sad. And then it turns out sad becomes the prerequisite for happiness itself. Now, it turns out that if you actually want to be happy, okay, not only do you have to deal with sadness, but you have to be able to feed the variety of different things you need as a human being. So it's very hard to be happy if one's starving. Really hard to be happy if one's freezing cold. Really very, very, very hard to be happy if one doesn't have clothes, if one's living homeless and poverty-stricken. So there's a minimum material goods that one needs to feel happy. That doesn't mean that you can't be happy being poverty-stricken, but it's very, very, very difficult. But it turns out that to be happy, one also needs a certain amount of emotional satisfaction and gratification. It's not enough simply for material goods. So one needs emotional gratification. And in each one of these areas, there's going to be sadness and loss and gain. So if you're going to be happy by material goods, no, there are going to be times in which you're going to feel some sadness about your material goods. But same on the emotional level. And you can't allow the material to crowd out the emotional. Now, it turns out, to be happy, you not only need material goods, you not only need emotional goods, but you also need intellectual goods. Show me someone who's never read a book. Show me someone who's never had a new idea, and I'll show you someone who probably isn't as fully happy as they could be. And so one needs to give time over and discipline and resources, one's own resources, to grow intellectually. And then it turns out not only do we have material goods that are necessary, at least up to a point, to be happy. Not only do we have a certain kind of emotional capital that we need to develop, love of other people and being loved by other people. Not only do we have intellectual capital that we need to have in our portfolio in order to feel happy, but we also need spiritual capital. And spiritual capital is that capital that when everything else gets depleted, we still know deep down that there's a reason we're here on this planet, that the 14 billion years that's unfolded since the very beginning of time somehow produced me right here. That independent of all the other forms of capital that help me become happy, it's like, God is with me and so I have nothing to fear. The very fact of my life, to be attuned with that, helps create a level of happiness. Now it turns out in each of those areas, we have to be able to say, Dayenu. That is the most important practice regarding happiness. Dayenu means, can I really understand where enough is enough for right now? But the most important there is it's for right now. If you look at the Dayenu, which is for it's a ditty song kind of for Passover. If all God did was take the Israelites out of Egypt, but didn't take us through the desert, Dayenu, it's enough. If all God did was take the Israelites out of the desert, but didn't take them into the land, Dayenu. Well, it turns out Dayenu is the most sophisticated prescription psychologically and spiritually for happiness. Because actually it wouldn't have been enough had God taken us out of Egypt and not taken us through the desert and we died in the desert. We wouldn't be here to be talking. So what is the poet doing? This is a profound meditation on happiness. You have to hold two things together. You have to want it all and always be satisfied with enough. Always be finding enough. Most people who want it all are never finding enough. And most people who are always finding enough have given up on wanting it all. Now it turns out you can't be genuinely happy unless you actually want it all and are always finding enough in all of the categories: the material, the emotional, psychological, the intellectual and the spiritual.